Some people watch horror. Some people love horror. And then there are people who are just born horror guys. People who didn't just enjoy the monsters, they became them. People who turned horror and fantasy into a life's mission. Today, we're going to be talking about one of the purest horror guys to ever live. A man who embodied horror regardless of what role he took on a film. This man's name? Jacinto Molina, better known as Paul Naschy. He might be the biggest horror guy who has ever walked the planet. We're going to cover his life in this video, and then one of his films, The Werewolf versus the Vampire Woman. And then I want to show you a comparison of the quality between some of the versions of this film. But before we jump in, please like, subscribe, comment, all the things that like real YouTube dudes always ask for. Well, now I'm asking. Let's get into it. Paul Naschy, born Jacinto Molina Alvarez, was born in Madrid, Spain in 1934, 2 years before the Spanish Civil War. Life wasn't easy for Jacinto. His father was killed by Franco's men, and he found escape in horror books, comics, art, anything genre-related. There's a documentary called The Man Who Saw Frankenstein Cry, the life and legend of a horror icon. It's actually included on one of the discs that I will be talking about. Okay, just make sure that. Ooh, look, there's some weird. I see. Okay, sorry about that. That's a copy I'm going to be talking about a little bit later. But the video. There's actually the Vinegar Syndrome release of The Werewolf versus the Vampire Woman. But anyways, this documentary, The Man Who Saw Frankenstein Cry, tells the story of how when Jacinto was 11 years old, he saw a movie poster outside a theater. He begged his mom to let him see it for a long time. She refused for weeks until she finally gave in. And yeah, we all know how annoying kids can be, and giving in sometimes is just the best thing to do. Anyway, the movie was Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman from 1943. And that was it. From then on, he was hooked. That doesn't mean he jumped straight into filmmaking, though. As he got older, Jacinto became a serious athlete. He attended a German school in Madrid. He played soccer and he wrestled. He also gained notoriety as a bodybuilder. It turns out he was a pretty well-rounded guy. He studied architecture, wrote novels under the pseudonym Jack Mills, and even worked as an illustrator. His parents obviously wanted him to take the safer route in life with architecture, but eventually it was time for Jacinto to follow his passion. In 1967, he wrote the screenplay for Frankenstein's Bloody Terror, and it was released in 1968. The thing is he wasn't originally meant to star in the film, but due to unforeseen circumstances, he ended up in the lead role. That turned out to be one of the biggest breaks in his life. It launched his career, and let's be honest, he was a big buff dude, so playing a werewolf in that movie worked perfectly. But from there, it was like the lid came off Pandora's box. According to IMDb, Naschy has 23 directorial credits, 52 writing credits, and 119 acting credits. His career began in 1960 with small parts, a little extra work, thing like that. But he exploded in 1968 with, like I said, Frankenstein's Bloody Terror, and I got that right here. Ooh, that's too shiny. I need to work on that a little bit. But this is the first one he wrote and the first one he starred in. Anyways, after that, he kept going for decades. Even though he passed away in 2009 at the age of 75 from cancer, his latest credit is from 2021. So in that sense, he's still living on. And of course, he lives on through his work, especially as the Wolfman. For Frankenstein's Bloody Terror, he originally wrote the Wolfman character as Jose Huidobro. Spain's censorship board wanted nothing to do with the Spanish Wolfman, however, so he was forced to move the setting to Central Europe, and he renamed the character Waldemar Daninsky. And he was also advised that taking on a pseudonym would help him succeed internationally. That's when Jacinto Molina became Paul Naschy. Naschy would play Waldemar Daninsky 12 times, with his final appearance in 2004's Tomb of the Werewolf, directed by Fred Olen Ray. Daninsky wasn't his only recurring role, but it definitely will be the one that he's remembered for. Obviously, there are a ton of Naschy movies. There's a ton of amazing movies that he's involved with. It was difficult to actually choose which of his films to talk about for this show. However, I ended up choosing the very first Naschy and Daninsky movie that I ever saw, The Werewolf versus the Vampire Woman. There's a version of this that has been in the public domain forever, and that's where I caught it. It's one of those 50 packs. This is not it, but it's a similar pack to this. Like, you remember these old ones that there's 50 movies and they're all like, there's like 2 on a disc and they're all just kind of garbage quality, but you bought it for $10 and you had 50 movies to sit through. And I mean, if you're like me, when I was a kid, I used to bust through those and enjoyed them all, even though it was difficult to see. And I'll show you a little comparison of the quality a little bit later. But like I said, it wasn't this one, but it's one that's similar to that. I saw this years ago and recently picked up the Vinegar Syndrome remastered 4K version that I showed you a minute ago. Thank goodness for this, because the quality is exponentially better. I'll actually show you what I'm talking about, like I said. But anyways, let's get into the movie. The Werewolf versus the Vampire Woman currently has a 5.3 on IMDb with about 2,300 ratings. It was directed by Leon Klimovsky, a frequent collaborator with Naschy on his films. Klimovsky directed 76 films overall, and 9 with Naschy. Some of those were Dr. Jekyll and the Wolfman from 1971, Vengeance of the Zombies from 1972, The Devil's Possessed from 1974, and a giallo-esque thriller called The Blue Eyes of the Broken Doll from 1973. This movie stars Paul Naschy as Waldemar Daninsky, like I said, the beautiful Gabby Fuchs as Elvira. Fuchs, who is well known for Mark of the Devil from 1970, does a great job in this and is gorgeous in this. This starred Patty Shepard as Countess Wandessa Darvula Dinassati, the titular vampire woman. She did such a great job that people were starting to think that she'd take up the mantle held by Barbara Steele as the Gothic princess of films. Alas, for one reason or another, it wouldn't really come to be. It also starred Barbara Capel as Genevieve Bennett and Yelena Samarina as Elizabeth Daninsky, Waldemar's sister. The setting is the north of France. A set of doctors has been called in the middle of the night to a local morgue where a mortician is convinced that the body on the slab, complete with a weirdly shaped pentagram on his chest and a couple of silver bullets lodged in his body, is a werewolf. Silly doctor who doesn't believe in that mumbo-jumbo proceeds to have the bullets taken out. What do you think happens? I mean, that's right. Waldemar Daninsky is resurrected and takes out the monster. Then, like a huge dickhead, he's running away, seeing some random lady on his run home, and he just kills her for a quick snack. Meanwhile, a couple of students from the University of Cologne named Elvira. By the way, Elvira, that character was named after Naschy's real wife of 40 years. And so Elvira and Genevieve are on a research trip to study a Hungarian countess named Wandessa Darvula Dinassati. Legend has it that she is an all-time beauty. It's probably because legend also states that she drank the blood of virgins to stay young. It's been told that she lays in her grave right now with the silver cross thrust into her heart all the way up to this day. These two young ladies come upon the living area of Waldemar Daninsky, a handsome and charming man. It turns out, however, the girls need gas, food, lodgings, but Daninsky can only help with the lodgings. He doesn't have a phone. He's out in the middle of nowhere. It sounds like a great setup, to be honest with you, this day and age. So he invites them to stay with him until the supply man, who is scheduled to come on next Sunday, shows up with the supplies, and then they can go get help then. Everything starts out fine until they uncover the grave of Countess Wandessa, and Elvira stupidly not only pulls out the silver cross, but manages to cut herself and bleed on Wandessa's skull mouth. Man, I mean, shit at this point hits the fan. Wandessa is out there turning women into vampires, is always looking for her next victim, and they seem to be hot ladies, which I cannot complain about. But if that wasn't enough, Elvira finds out only after falling in love with him that Waldemar Daninsky is a werewolf. Again, crap hits the fan again, women are disappearing. Daninsky is trying to behave long enough until the film's climax, where the werewolf and the vampire woman will clash to determine the fate of the town. Will Daninsky be able to save his love Elvira? Will the Countess capture and turn all the beautiful women in town? There's no possible way that the climax of this movie is just Daninsky and Wandessa wrestling in a tomb, is there? Find out by watching The Wolfman versus the Vampire Woman. Speaking of wrestling, by the way, something that cracks me up about certain werewolf movies, like it totally applies to Paul Naschy's Daninsky. Oliver Reed, if you've ever seen The Curse of the Werewolf from 1961, and, even to a lesser degree, maybe Lon Chaney, back from the original. They're just big dudes with regular big dude strength running around hopping off things and snarling. It's like, it cracks me up. They're doing their best, right? And they're hopping around, they're jumping, they're being crazy, but they just kind of seem like crazy hairy dudes. But it's part of the charm of this anyway. Spoiler. But yeah, the werewolf and vampire woman were just wrestling on the tomb floor at the end. Naschy's, like you said, he's doing sweet jumps, arms up in werewolf offensive position and snarling throughout the whole thing. No matter, the movie looked amazing. It was fun. It was full of gorgeous sets, sexy and alluring women, and perfectly suited landscapes. In fact, we get a cameo from Armando de Osorio's Inquisition Zombies. Do you know Osorio? The man who wrote and directed the Blind Dead films, Tombs of the Blind Dead from 1972, Return of the Evil Dead from 1973, Ghost Galleon from 1974, and Night of the Seagulls, 1975. He was making these movies around the same time that Naschy was doing a lot of his. On top of that, Jess Franco had been and continued to make films. We all know Jess Franco. He's maybe the sleaziest director of all time. Anyway, I brought these guys up because I really feel like these guys are the big three, like, grandfathers of Spanish horror. They're all doing great. They all made a ton of movies, and they'll be remembered forever. One thing that also cracks me up about Naschy's films, and it's true about this one as well, is he writes, sometimes directs, and acts in all his films. Well, what would you do if you wrote and played the lead actor in the same movie?
I tell you what I'd do, man. 2 chicks at the same time, man.
Actually, that's not far off, because Naschy is notorious for giving himself sexy scenes opposite the beautiful women in his films. Listen, why not? It's like, hell to the king, baby. I love this movie. I love watching Naschy on film. His charisma is awesome. Even when he gets a little bit older, his charisma changes from the hot, strong guy to the old wisdom-bearing man. And it's just great. But he's giving it his all, man, in every one of his movies. I love the way his films are written. I love how his movies are filmed. Like I said, the look and feel were great. Klimovsky, along with Leopoldo Villaseñor, the cinematographer, did a great job of just adding so much atmosphere in this through lighting, slow motion, mist, other techniques that I have no idea about because I'm not a filmmaker. But I think that the biggest crime in this is that it took forever to get a copy worthy of how great this actually looks. There are a ton of versions of this. It was made for the international market because the censorship under Franco was such that nudity was a no-no in Spain, and excessive violence, blood, or gore was highly discouraged. Therefore, in the beginning, there were 3 versions of this film. At least but also on the Vinegar Syndrome set, every one of these versions is part of that set. We have the international quote-unquote nude cut. That's on the 4K. There's also a Spanish clothed cut with a bunch of censorship. Finally, there's a Spanish integral cut, which is a bit of a hybrid between the two. However, the cut that I first saw was the public domain English dubbed version, and as far as I know, it's in the public domain to this day. I'm going to do a little comparison now. The one that looks really good isn't the 4K version of this film, but it's the same cut, kind of downgraded, because, it's not going to look amazing on YouTube anyhow, because I'm filming this in 1080p, and smaller, blah, 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 you understand. But the 2 at the top are the public domain versions. The one on the left is what it looked like the first time I watched it. It was just awful. It was one of those, like I said, it's on those 50 public domain movie packs, but I wonder if they even still sell those, to be honest with you. I haven't seen one in quite a while, but man, I bought them all when they were popular. Maybe they're still out there, let me know. But the one on the top right is the actual copy that you can download from archive.org right now. It's not bad. The resolution isn't nearly HD, but it's watchable at least, but this is the English dubbed version, is definitely not the nude version. So you can watch it, it's great, but you'll be missing out on some goodies. Anyway, the Vinegar Syndrome copy has a few cool extras, most notably the documentary that I was talking about earlier, The Man Who Saw Frankenstein Cry, which is narrated by Mick Garris and has a lot of great guests that are interviewed. A comparison of the opening and ending titles from the different versions. A lot of that had to do with, there's a nude part, like I said, he's being a dickhead and runs off and sees some lady, and there's in the nude version you get to see the gore a little bit, you get to see her boobies. And the other ones, it just cuts to some like random intro, and it's I don't know. Anyway, you see all the differences there. There's some trailers and some images. All in all, I'd urge you to check out Naschy's work if you haven't already. Some of the movies, they'll give you some kind of Hammer vibes, but some will give more like Jess Franco vibes, but all of them are great. I think that's all that I have for this episode. Do me a favor, like, subscribe. Like I said, go check out corpsecollective.com if you would. We got a lot of some other stuff going on over there and a lot of old stuff that you can go check out. Thanks. I just appreciate you guys checking this video out. Make sure to check out what's coming up as well, because I'm planning on keeping on, I guess. But until then, I'll catch you guys later.